Welcome back. This is the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneider, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato. Today we're here to break down the Giants' All-22 defensive film in their loss to the Miami Dolphins in Week 5. Nick, as I always like to say, and we're going to get into some stats and some numbers, but I always would like to say, first I want to hear what your takeaway was watching the film versus what you saw on the broadcast on the defensive side of the ball.
There's just some observations. The Giants started this game and they were using big nickel versus 12 personnel. So you saw big nickel with Dane Belton, who I didn't particularly think had too good of a game, a lot of missed tackles, a lot of gambles that he took trying to undercut blocks and abandoning his responsibility, it looked like. But that's how the Giants started. But when McDaniel and the Dolphins would go to 11, they would just go to traditional nickel with Cordell Flott. I don't have the numbers in front of me of how much the Giants were in base, but it did seem like there were a lot of lighter bodies out there and they were in sub package much more. Did not see a lot of pressure. I know Mike McDaniel will talk about what he said after the game. We can get into that in a little bit. This is kind of what I expected. And we talked about on the preview show. Look, the Giants are either going to send the house because they feel like they're overmatched, or they're going to play two deep zones and they're going to try to keep everything in front of them, which is, to me, the way you try to beat this offense that is everything is so quick, everything is right out of your hands, because if you blitz, you're probably going to get burned. And they still tried to be that more conservative defense, but it didn't matter because the explosive play torched the Giants. Any run to the outside, the Giants couldn't defend. Isaiah Simmons was flying around the field. He didn't have a perfect game, but that closing burst that he has just jumped out on film. Dexter Lawrence was double teamed frequently when he was rushing the passer and also in the run game whenever the front warranted it. And yeah, man. So I thought it was interesting. I said we go through some of the coverage because it was a much different game plan from Wink Martindale, who ran cover 2 so much more than we've seen. And when we was in cover 2 man, which is something that we don't see that much even from this man-heavy team, and Waddle and Hill were on the outside. When Waddle and Hill were on the outside, this was interesting. They would run cover 2 man, and they would have each of the cornerbacks, whoever it was, be in trail. And then both of the deep safeties would cloud over the top of both of those cornerbacks. And you saw it on a couple plays. I'll actually bring up something that I have when you're talking to show the audience exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I think your takeaways were similar to mine. I mean, I expected the Giants to have issues with this outside run game based on the film they put together last year, the system, the players they still have, but it happened as expected. And what really bothered me, Nick, watching the film was how hapless they were against the quick passes around the line of scrimmage that seemed to be when the Giants run them, there's no space. And when the Dolphins run them, there's all sorts of space.
Cut in real quick, Dan.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but this is exactly what I was talking about with the two deep plays. Like, look, you have somebody in trail technique. You could see how both these guys are underneath. They're allowing these players to run to the safeties, and the safeties are going to take over the top. You're basically sandwiching the players. That's what the Giants were doing in cover 2 man when both of those receivers were on the outside. They're saying, we're going to run man coverage. Cover 2 is something we never do. We're not going to allow you to beat us with Waddle and Hill. This didn't happen too much because McDaniel combated this by aligning Hill and Waddle on the inside a lot, using them in motion, changing responsibilities. But there was one play, and I don't know if I have it cut up, and I'm sure you remember it, when Tua decided to throw this football. And it was almost caught. That's how accurate Tua Tagovailoa is. It was almost caught. I think it was to start the second half. But the defender who was in trail kind of got a piece of it. And I was like, holy crap, man. It's crazy that he tried to fit that football in. But the Giants were doing this to eliminate these two explosive threats. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough.
Yeah, and they got caught a couple of times. Like they got caught the time when they had Pinnock playing press man against, not Pinnock, Trey Hawkins playing press man against Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, that wasn't cover 2 man. That was cover.
Yeah, that wasn't in cover 2 man. I'm just saying they got caught at times, like even with this game plan, they still couldn't get it going. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, I just don't understand how teams are able to operate with that amount of space on those quick throws out to the receivers, because that seemed to just absolutely kill the Giants. The Giants, you said it best. The Giants had light personnel in this game. They didn't play a single, according to True Media, they didn't play a single snap on defense in their base defense. 45 plays in nickel, 9 in dime, and that was it. They only had 54 plays on defense. Despite that, they played 44 of those 54 plays in press man coverage, 80% according to True Media. They also allowed 9.7 yards per rush attempt, which is an insane number, man, and over 10 yards per offensive play. They actually had only allowed a 37.5% conversion rate on third downs, which is pretty solid, honestly, for the Giants defense. It was the early downs that killed the Giants in this game. They gave up 3 plays of 25 plus yards. Coverage wise, 21 or 31.5% snaps in cover 2, according to True Media, 9.3% in cover 3, 16.7% in quarters, 11.1% in cover 6, 5.6% in 2-man, only 1.9% cover 0, which is a change from what they're used to doing with Wink Martindale. He ran it like 1 of every 10 plays almost to start the season before this game, and then 9.3% in cover 1. Despite that, Nick, they only had gotten pressure on Tua on 16.1% of his dropbacks, which is an insanely low number. 1 sack in this game by Kayvon Thibodeaux. As you mentioned earlier, Nick, Mike McDaniel called Wink Martindale's game plan the antithesis of what they actually prepared for during the week. So we saw something similar to, the Trevor Lawrence game last year, where it wasn't your typical Wink Martindale aggressive game plan. It was almost the opposite.
Yeah, it's not a surprise either, like we brought up on the previous podcast before this game. But cover 2, 31.5% of the time, is a complete deviation from what the Giants have run throughout the Wink Martindale era. And that's one thing that I'll say about Wink Martindale. I don't feel like a lot of Giants fan bases understand. They're just like, oh yeah, he just sends pressure. It's like he doesn't. He's an adaptive defensive coordinator. And I think he's pretty damn good at it. I think he got caught up, and we'll go over that play with that Xavier McKinney got blamed by Jonathan Vilma, and Xavier McKinney was took exception to that. He was not happy, but it wasn't Xavier McKinney's fault. I thought initially too that it was Xavier McKinney's fault, but it was just a cover 1 call. And if you look at the cover 1 that Wink Martindale was calling, this is how much respect that the Giants had for the Dolphins' speed. Jason Pinnock was 25 yards off the football. It was like Jabril Peppers and Greg Williams' defense when he was with the Browns. He was so far off the football to respect the hell out of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Devon Achane, and Raheem Mostert. Like, it's just an insane amount of speed on the football field. But on that play, we'll go over it a little bit later. Having Trey Hawkins against Tyreek Hill with no help over the top, that was on a 3rd down.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's a bad call by Wink. Like, again, I think McKinney did a good job breaking down how Vilma was wrong. But it's crazy to me that that's the call on a 3rd down. But also, it's crazy to me just from a football standpoint, Nick. Like, I put this on Twitter. Like, he plays his safety so far off the ball on those cover 1 type snaps. And yet, despite Jason Pinnock having that much depth, he couldn't even get over there in time to cut off the angle on Hill. That's how fast Tyreek Hill is.
No, but we'll break down that play a little bit later. One reason for that was Tua, and I think Brian Dable, he didn't come out and say this, but after the game, he mentioned something like, yeah, Tua made a nice play there. It's because Tua looks to his left. Tua looks to his left. And if you look at the other side of the field, you had 2 concepts. One was an out and up. I think Pinnock just shaded enough into that direction that he removed himself from the play. I would have to imagine, though, that Wink Martindale and the defensive staff is like, shade to Tyreek Hill's side. Like, don't get manipulated by Tua Tagovailoa's eyes. But I'm assuming that did not happen because Pinnock didn't play it that way.
Fair. And then we'll have to see based on when we run it back. But yeah, it was a rough game for the Giants, obviously, on the defensive side of the ball. All right, let's get into the plays. This is the first play of the game. I also put this one on Twitter, just that's like, this is a cheat code Mike McDaniel type play.
It's such a cheat code, Mike McDaniel, but there's just so much eye candy. I feel so bad for these 2nd-level defenders. Like, what the hell are they supposed to do when you have, who is that? Jalen Waddle in the backfield going into the mesh point with Tyreek Hill on the end around. And if you're a linebacker, you're reading your run keys. You're reading that H-back, and you're seeing the pull. You have the guard, the backside guard pull. Is this GH counter again? This is something the Giants can't stop. They're going to hand it off to Jalen Waddle. That's crazy. No, end around to Tyreek Hill. And watch all the Giants just be like, oh, crap. And now you have 2 blockers in space because the H-back just pivoted off of his original path, and now he's wide open in space, as well as another player, the play side wide receiver on that side, dude. It's just so many bodies to block, and it's just like, oh my God, this is absolutely terrible. And you could see how before every single snap, Dan, McDaniel and this offense, they were running something that looked somewhat similar to this.
Right.
It's just, you want to read your keys? Fine. It doesn't matter. You can be illiterate, and it doesn't freaking matter out here, Dan, because this team has so many different things up their sleeves. This offense, this Dolphins team, it's a nightmare to play against them. And everything they ran to the outside, they ran a ton of crack toss. They ran plays like this, end around, jet sweep. They had everything in their bag. We knew they were going to employ it, and the Giants had absolutely no answer.
Yeah, I knew they would struggle against crack toss type plays just based on the film from last year. This is actually, I think you mentioned Hill, but this was actually Devin Achane on that.
Was that Chain, yeah.
Yeah, or Achane, I should say. But what's interesting to me is where Achane is lined up before the snap as a receiver. Like, they can just do whatever they want with this personnel because they don't conform to traditional ways of running an offense and where players should be aligned. Obviously, you mentioned Waddle was lined up in the background here, and you just have such a good example of what you can do to stop the Giants. You have all that eye candy moving to the left. You even have the pulling guard to really show this is going to be a run to the left. And you just flip it back to the right, and Achane can beat your guys around. Like, because that's the thing. Like, if you look at the play from the end zone angle, you could see the penetration the Giants' interior defensive line gets, but it doesn't matter. Like, that's why the play is so brilliant, because you can get all the interior defensive penetration you want, but Achane can just take a wide angle with his speed and then beat all those guys who are now out of the play. And now all you have left is a bunch of defenders who have been pulled, pushed, pinned down toward the line of scrimmage. So free lane for Achane. It's just crazy to watch, man.
What's going on, Big Blue Banter listeners? I'm excited for the football season for several reasons. And one of those reasons is Prize Picks, which is North America's largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform. And it's so simple to use. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including professionals, sharks, and people who are going to exploit you, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you just watch the winnings roll in. It's very simple to play and gives you a little extra skin. I've set my picks in less than 60 seconds. There are so many stats to choose from, and the withdrawals of funds are easy and quick. Dan and I will be adding a segment to our show before every game where we pick our favorite stats, more or less yards or touchdowns, what have you, and we'll be discussing why from a scheme, matchup, and game theory perspective. I love their promotions and how easy their interface is to operate at Prize Picks. I may select more on tackles for a loss from Bobby Okereke or Kayvon Thibodeaux next game. They also do other sports as well. It's a really cool experience. Please join Dan and I in the fun of Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/banter and use code BANTER for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/banter and use code BANTER for a first deposit match up to $100. You will not regret it. Make Little Caesars, the official pizza sponsor of the NFL, part of your game day. There are few things better in the world than kicking back, watching some football, and biting into some delicious Little Caesars pizza. Order online during our Pizza pregame, 1 hour before and 3 hours after NFL kickoffs, plus all day on Sunday. And get ready for some football and fun. Choose your favorite Little Caesars pizza or pick the toppings you crave. Old World pepperoni, extra cheese, Italian sausage, olives, onions, pineapple if you're into that. Put it on half the pie, the entire pie. There are so many other options that I don't have time to name. Slap that on a round crust, a thin crust, a stuffed crust, a Detroit-style deep dish. Either way, you win. And speaking of winning, everyone scores with convenient delivery or our in-store pizza portal pickup. So grab some friends and enjoy a few slices during the game. To exercise and recover at your best, you need quality sleep. And to achieve quality sleep, the right mattress matters. Mattress Firm will help you find the right mattress for restful and restorative sleep with their wide selection of high-quality mattresses from top brands at every price point. Quality sleep on the right mattress means improving your overall performance both in and out of gameplay. And with Mattress Firm's low price guarantee, you can rest easy. See a lower price? Mattress Firm will match it. Plus, try it for 120 nights to make sure it's right for you or your money back. To start feeling and performing at your best, find your mattress at the early holiday savings event at your local Mattress Firm store or online. We are brought to you today by Manscaped, who has taken a step up from Halloween to bring your face the cleanest shave it's ever seen. So this season, no need to toil and trouble. Manscaped's all-new Handyman is the best way to get rid of that stubble. Featuring a compact design and next-gen skin-safe technology, the Handyman was designed to give you that smooth finish without the mess of a traditional shave. Get the sweetest treat this Halloween by going to manscaped.com and use code BIGBLUE for 20% off plus free shipping. And for all my wolfmen out there, yo, shout out. If you got a little bit more scruff on your face, Manscaped's Beard Hedger Pro Kit has everything you need to tame your mane. This cordless trimmer has a rotary wheel that gives you 20 hair cutting lengths, all with one guard. So no more drawers full of extra add-ons collecting cobwebs, and it's very annoying to organize. There's no trick with this treat. Manscaped has you covered. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code BIGBLUE at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code BIGBLUE. For a look as sweet as candy, get yourself the handyman from Manscaped. All right, Dan, I'm about to go over a Xavier McKinney strip play. I wanted to highlight the McKinney play in the red zone, but for whatever reason, when I exported this video, the screen just turned black, so I can't go over that play. It was a very nice play in the red zone by Xavier McKinney to read exactly what was going on, hear the push call from Jason Pinnock on Jalen Waddle, who was lackadaisically releasing off the line of scrimmage, like, oh, I'm not here, don't look at me, and then just sprinted to the back pylon, and McKinney was able to recognize it. I think Tua, if he threw it a little bit quicker, it would have been a touchdown, but good play by McKinney to not fall for the eye candy long enough to allow that play to be completed. Maybe I'll pull it up a little bit later in the podcast if I can find it on my desktop. Pissed that it's not in the video. And then I also had Achan's speed, the long touchdown run on it as well, but for whatever reason that didn't export. So now I'm going to get into, though, the Xavier McKinney. I think this is the punch out from Xavier McKinney. This is a very just good play by the safety of the New York Giants, man, because he's coming downhill, and you can see how the Giants are trying to fit this. Dane Belton sets to the outside. Let's box Achane back to the inside to my pursuit defenders. Okereke attempts to get around the center, who does an excellent job pulling up to the level, because DJ Davidson is a bad look for DJ Davidson. DJ Davidson needs to hold up here, but you can see how he gets tossed to the ground, and now there's no threat there, giving this huge alley and putting so much stress on the second level defenders. Okereke removes the outside, boxes him back inside to a pursuit defender named Isaiah Simmons, who does a good job contacting him, but can't bring him down. But watch how Xavier McKinney comes from depth. The Giants are in too high here, like they were most of the game. He breaks down. This is what we're talking about. You want to break down. You want to come to balance. You want to present your numbers to your threat. And he presents his numbers to the threat. You can see that. And then once Achane recollects his balance, he tries to get outside of the block where Deonte Banks is. And McKinney does such a good job punching that football out and allowing Kayvon Thibodeaux to jump on it. So I think Xavier McKinney had a much better game than maybe he's getting credit for. Maybe because a lot of people think that was a blown coverage on his part, but he had this. He had a bunch of other tackles. I think he had six tackles in the game, and he also had the PBU in the red zone on Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, people are also blaming him for the Achane touchdown run. Just the angle he took.
Oh, the angle was not great, yes.
Yeah.
But Achane
I would
is
agree
also,
overall. If you
so
look
fast.
at the full film, like overall, he did not have a bad game in this game. All things considered relative.
Oh my God. Another black screen. This is insane.
Oh, no. Yeah, that screen is black like my heart after watching the Giants on film this year, Nick. Laugh through the pain.
Laugh through the pain, Dan. And yes, now we'll go over the pick six. This is a good play, right? Good play by the New York Giants. Pick six by Jason Pinnock. Really set up by Bobby Okereke, who also had a very good game here. Got to catch that, though, Okereke. But you know what? You're not outrunning all of these fast guys to the end zone. So luckily it was Jason Pinnock who ends up catching it on the tip. And then the Giants just make a wall. You see a bunch of blocks downfield. Kayvon Thibodeaux ends up tossing this player. You'll see right here. And he like throws his arm in the air like, what? I got hit. It's like, no. That's completely fair. Like, he barely touched you. He's just trying to get a penalty. Jason Pinnock has some speed, takes it to the house. It's fun to go over some positive football when you stop an offense that's this efficient, this explosive, and this quick and just this good in the red zone. It's pretty fun. And you can see how Okereke is just watching. Okay. He's going for Jalen Waddle. I felt like because Jalen Waddle hasn't been fed this year, they were really targeting him. They wanted to get the football to Jalen Waddle. They wanted
especially
this to be
in the red zone.
Oh, yeah, dude. He had like at least 4 or 5 red zone targets. And you can see how Okereke just jumps it. And then Pinnock ends up intercepting it, taking it all the way back. Tyreek Hill gets pushed out of bounds by Deonte Banks.
Great job by Bobby Okereke to read to his eyes, jump, and make a play on the ball. Obviously couldn't come down with the interception, but a great job tipping it up in the air.
Then we got Kayvon Thibodeaux sack, man. This is what, 4 sacks in 3 weeks?
Yeah.
He already matched his sack total from last year. These aren't just unblocked sacks. I still don't see him getting multiple moves off and having this huge pass rushing repertoire, but that confidence seems to be back. He's not as hesitant as he was in week 2 against the Arizona Cardinals. And on this play, I think 70 thought he was going to have 77 help. You could see these guys are sliding, right? You can see how there's 4 offensive linemen who are inside that hash against 2 New York Giants. I think 70 set to the outside. He opens his hips, and he thought 77 was going to protect him a little bit, and 77 didn't because Leonard Williams ends up looping way around, and he just never closes the B gap. And Kayvon does a good job using powerful hands, engage with power, work the speed to the inside, bring that outside arm to the inside, then present the back of your shoulder, dip, go right into the pocket. Tua almost spun out of this, but Kayvon finishes the sack. And also Azeez Ojulari's pressure from the other side helps kind of collapse everything on top of Tua Tagovailoa. So good rep by the 2 young pass rushers of the New York Giants.
Yeah, definitely an excellent rep. It's good to see, Kayvon come alive in these weeks. And hopefully, as you mentioned, Azeez Ojulari, and that the ankle injury is nothing too crazy. Obviously injured again is not great. But yeah, Kayvon's definitely come alive more in these last few weeks.
He's just looked better on film. He's still, as a run defender, like when you're getting that abused on the edge, it's hard. Because similar to week 3,
he might have been held on that HN run. It's hard to say. He obviously acted like he was held, like he threw his hands up. I couldn't tell. I tried to watch that back like 4 times on both angles. It's just hard to tell. But and that could be part of it. But I agree with you, generally speaking, in the run game.
And if you look at how McDaniel runs a lot of these outside runs when it is zone, they just take that H back from the other side and they use him as a lead blocker to basically kick out that end. It's just such a difficult assignment when you are an edge rush. I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but this is just a very creative rushing attack employed. And the Giants didn't go with much beef. They were going with speed. So you had Dane Belton out there who missed, I think, like 4 tackles, maybe even more in this football game. Micah McFadden, one of your better run defenders, surprisingly enough, was not out there. He wasn't dressed for this game. So just something I wanted to bring up. But this is the play, the 3rd down, long 69-yard touchdown, giggity, to Tyreek Hill, just blows right past Trey Hawkins III. And let's go through it real quick. To me, this looks like cover 1, double robber, meaning both Dane Belton and Xavier McKinney, they're going to drop, and they're going to hope, since this is like a 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 5, that the Dolphins are going to run quick in breaking routes, slants, and things of that nature right into the double robber position. You have a single high safety protecting over the top. Dolphins end up taking the deep shot. Look, man, when you align a 6th-round rookie up against Tyreek Hill, and there's not necessarily a safety, I would say, looking like he's going to take the deep half, unless the Giants thought Xavier McKinney was disguising that, maybe you should expect a deep pass in that situation. That's exactly what the Giants receive. You can see you have like an inside shade here from Trey Hawkins. He's not even outside funneling into the inside either. So I'm like, why is he inside? It's like he didn't expect any help at all. I'm going to use a sideline to force you. It's like, no, man, like you're not, because you're going to go to jam Tyreek Hill, and you can't do that against a player like Hill, man, especially when you're a 6th-round rookie. You can see how easily Tyreek Hill just slips and slithers around him, and there's no one there at all. And Pinnock, if you look at the bottom of the screen, Pinnock is staying in the middle of the field. Tua's eyes, where are they going? Tua's eyes are to the left. You can see his helmet is pointing to the left. Maybe you can see that a little bit better from the end zone angle. Hits the back foot, eyes go to the right. At this point, play is done. Where is Jason Pinnock? He's directly in the middle of the field. Xavier McKinney and Dane Belton are both in their buzz robber positions. So this is a really tough spot for Trey Hawkins III to find himself in. You know, when people put up those tweets of, you may be wondering why I'm in this position. Like, this is one of those spots for Trey Hawkins III. And I'm not trying to kick him while he's down. It's just trying to ask him to man up Tyreek Hill and press on a 3rd down with no safety help over the top.
Leverage, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, maybe it wasn't supposed to be an inside leverage. I'm honestly not certain. But yeah, that's easy pitch and catch for Tua and Tyreek Hill. And you can see it here from the end. Of course, the camera's kind of blocking it, but you can see how, look at the stripe of his helmet. It's to the left, hits the back foot, comes back to the right. Just look how much space Tyreek has. I mean, you just can't do that. Let's look at the pass rush real quick. Double team on Dexter Lawrence. They only send 3. Giants are dropping 8 here on this 3rd down.
Right.
Dropping 8. And this happens, and you're not protecting your 6th-round pick. That's bad. There's something wrong there. Like, that's not good on Wink Martindale. Maybe there was a blown assignment or something, but that's just not a great look.
Yeah, good placement by Tua, by the way. Outside shoulder led to the receiver, so he has perfect, can catch it. It's almost like a Russell Wilson run under it type of ball, which always lead to yards after the catch.
Alrighty. And now we have just some plays by Dexter Lawrence, who's still silly, still stupid. Dan, like, look at him just toss 77 to the ground as a backside defender, just throws him. I'm like, oh, did 77 trip over somebody? Nope. You
No,
just
he
had to
lost
struggle.
balance after that first initial pop.
You just have to struggle with the absolute strength and the beastness, if that's a word, of Dexter Lawrence. And then when you have a defensive lineman like Dexter Lawrence, you can steal gaps as a defense. And that's something that we talk about a lot on the podcast. And what do I mean by that? Well, this is a running play out of pistol. I believe it's 11 personnel. It might be 12 personnel. I'm not really 100% sure who that guy is to the right of the screen, regardless of the fact you have a one technique Dexter Lawrence. Watch how he is going to be engaged by the guard and how he removes the A gap as the center climbs up to the second level. He puts his presence in the A gap, uses his outside arm to keep the guard from gaining any sort of control of his chest. And watch his hips. Where are his hips? His hips are in the A gap. So Achan's like, I can't go in the A gap. Dexter Lawrence there. Let me jump to the B gap where my blocker has leverage. But when you have a player like Dexter Lawrence, who is so damn strong, Dan, it doesn't matter because Dexter Lawrence will then close the B gap by just quick swim over. Like, that is just so prompt. Just absolutely controlling the guard at the point of attack, closes the B gap and helps make this tackle on Achan. Like, these are the types of plays that Dexter Lawrence doesn't get enough credit for. People are like, oh, he doesn't have a sack right now. I'm like, the fact that you have this player allows you to do so much on the defense with your coverage. One of the reasons why the Giants are comfortable lining too high against this specific team, even though the Dolphins are I think they lead the league in rushing, you can steal some of these interior gaps. And it wasn't like the Dolphins were running inside all that often. You had a run like this. Most of it was to the outside away from a player like Dexter Lawrence, man, because Dexter Lawrence can make you pay with plays like this, and he could just steal gaps. So your secondary doesn't have to account for those gaps, and you can allocate them more towards coverage because your run fits and your coverage, they're married. That's something that fans need to understand. All of this is married.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think what I think about when I see these breakdowns and when I watch the tape on Dexter Lawrence is twofold. One, specific to this game, I thought you brought up a great point. Think of how rarely the Dolphins even tried to run at Dexter Lawrence in this game or at the interior. They had a great game plan for how to run the football against the Giants in this game. Almost everything to the outside. That's how you beat the Giants. They were smart. They didn't get stubborn with it. But the second thing I think about Nick, and I know he's not on the field for every one of these snaps with Dexter Lawrence, but this game especially, man, and you wrote this in your notes, and there's something I noticed afterwards, especially after, having that prompted to me. Dexter Lawrence got double teamed a lot in this game, Nick.
Oh, yeah.
And like theoretically speaking, right, on paper, if Dexter Lawrence is getting double teamed a lot, Leonard Williams should be having a career year. Like, Leonard Williams should be a breakout player that you can't take off the field. Now, these guys aren't even on the field a lot together. And Ashawn Robinson didn't play many snaps in this game. That was weird. Weird things are going on right now with the Giants' defensive line. But Leonard Williams should be having his career year, theoretically speaking, on paper, when the guy next to him, now everyone knows about him in the NFL, Dexter Lawrence. Game plans have adjusted. There's more double teams than he's ever facing. So what the hell is going on? Like, how can that not lead to a breakout season for Leonard Williams, who's supposed to be a big name player with good film in his past, supposedly? It's frustrating to me to see the year he's having. And I know he had a good response game in week 3 after what I thought was the worst game of his Giants career by far against the Cardinals. That was the most lackadaisical effort I've ever seen from him. And against an offensive line that wasn't that good in my mind. I guess they're better than people expected, but I don't know, man. Like, what I've seen on tape this year from Leonard Williams, there's not even a chance in hell the Giants could bring him back at any price.
No, nor should they.
I think they should be looking to trade him at the deadline for whatever they can get back. 5th round pick, I don't care.
If they get anything back. I mean, that price,
nobody wants to pay that. Yeah.
That's a lot. I just wanted to show this play because, and there were a couple like this, but this is a good microcosm of what I referenced before. Man, Isaiah Simmons is explosive, man. He is so explosive. You see him in the middle. Watch him just accelerate and just closing bursts. He makes Achan stop himself. Like, oh, I don't have the speed to win outside. Let me try to cut back. Nope. Just get eliminated. He had a couple plays like this. Again, Isaiah Simmons, I still think there are issues with his game in terms of processing and things of that nature, playing off contact, not nearly as physical as Micah McFadden. But when you have this type of speed, you got to give a guy like this snaps. And you're right, man. Ashawn Robinson played 3 plays. I'm wondering if he got dinged up, but he hasn't looked good at all this entire season. So it might just be that fact, right? Because the one play early in the game, he got like thrown to the ground too. So 3 plays. The one play that was noticeable to me, he was thrown to the ground. I'm wondering if something happened, but I don't think Dable addressed that. And here's the touchdown run that blacked out a little bit before. You're going to see the bad angle from Xavier McKinney, too high. Just tries to just shallow angle, and that's just, hey, real speed. This is real NFL speed. This is Chris Johnson like speed, and I don't want to use. I don't use that loosely. This is like insane amount of speed, and you can see the run fit here, or the lack thereof, from the Giants. Kayvon, is he held? I think that's fair enough, man. He sets to the outside thinking that the linebackers are going to get up, but all game, the center had like a free release when the Giants would align with the two techs. The two techs, which is something they do when they're in their nickel package. They weren't in base all that much. So you had a lot of natural bubbles to where the offensive lineman can climb up to the second level and locate these linebackers. And you have this split zone run. Okereke gets eliminated, and then Isaiah Simmons comes, but he has 70 right in his lap. So who's accounting for it? And then you have a bad angle from Xavier McKinney, and then just look at the speed, man. That's just unfair from Achane.
Yeah, I said it on our podcast earlier today on Beyond the Box Score, but this was, people put a clips from the previous weeks. This was the first time I really felt like, yeah, that's CJ2K level speed. Like, that was crazy to eliminate that angle. It was one of the most insane things I've seen on a football field this year by any player.
It's just so smooth too. Like once he gets going, there's really no slowing him down if he stays linear. If he doesn't like drop his weight to try to cut somewhere, right? Try to juke. Once he stays linear, because you can see how he maneuvers, right? Like he's leaning in one direction, but he's still going linear, and his feet just don't slow down. It doesn't even look like he's like trying that hard. It's just
that's the craziest part. It doesn't even look like it's trying for him, and yet look at the ground he's able to create. So that was a crazy play for sure.
I also have the Bobby Okereke interception. I want to tip my cap to Bobby Okereke because I think Bobby Okereke. So how many times can I say Bobby Okereke in a row? I think he had his best game as a Giant. So that's the second week in a row that we're saying that, because he had some run plays too where he was aggressive and he was decisive. And obviously the one I just showed, I mean, it wasn't a great situation where the center can climb up to you like that, but he looked pretty good in this game. And he had what could have been 2 interceptions. Here he does a really good job just reading Tua through this football. And it looks like, when you play Madden, Dan, I love referencing Madden, and you accidentally press B and you want to throw to your B receiver, but you just tap it and you just loft it.
Yes.
Bulleting it in there. That's what it looks like Tua does on this play, because that's not even accurate. Like, that's a terrible throw. It is right to Okereke. It's nowhere near where Jalen Waddle is. And Okereke, look, first off, he's directing players because of the motion. You can see how he's telling Dane Belton, hey, get your ass outside and account for him. And then watch him look, okay, what's going on with 81 and 10? All right, I feel comfortable. Let me look at Tua. Where's Tua going with this football? And then he's able to quickly somehow process that it's going this way. Because watch, Tua's feet are not, he's trying to no-look this.
Right.
He's trying to Patrick Mahomes this pass in here. Dan, you ain't Patrick Mahomes, bro. And then he just flashes his eyes, but his feet are looking like he's throwing to the right. So that's a very risky pass. And that's one reason why it ends up being like this. Oh, it looked like Isaiah Simmons was teed up to get a sack here too if he doesn't. So maybe the pressure got to Tua a little bit and it was an overthrow right to Okereke. But good processing, good eyes from Bobby Okereke, who's finally starting to at least somewhat look like the player the Giants thought they were signing when they gave him a $10 million a year deal.
Yeah, I think a good point you brought up today is the improvement we saw in this game from the 2 linebackers. And I'll say they're the 2 linebackers now because I think it might look like this moving forward. We saw a big change this week with Micah McFadden not dressing for this game and Isaiah Simmons playing a lot more snaps than we're used to seeing him playing. I like the play.
McFadden's hurt though. So I'm wondering if that stands once he comes back. Because McFadden's been coming along, and there's a discernible difference between McFadden and Isaiah Simmons regarding just playing the run and just fitting it and being very physical. That's just not Simmons' game.
It might have been injury based. It's hard to know, but I feel like on the play you broke down, that kind of speed he had sideline to sideline there.
Crazy.
It's another level than what McFadden can give them. And Okereke just looked, in my opinion, like he was in a much I juxtaposed this version of Okereke versus week 1 versus Dallas, or even some moments of week 2 versus Arizona. It's like he just seems to be so much more comfortable within the system right now, and has his communication is so much better with the other players as well. He's really growing into more of a leadership role, something we expected from him. He's wearing the green dot. They didn't give it to McKinney. And I think overall in this game, the front 7 didn't have that awful of a game. It's just like there's so many design runs to the outside they can't contain. There's so many of these, or contain's not the right word, they can't stop. there's so many of these quick passes around this line of scrimmage that just seems like there's open space to be had. And you have time for these receivers to catch the ball, let blocks develop, and then run upfield, which is crazy to me. I just ultimately feel like maybe this Giants defense didn't really have the best answers for what the Dolphins were doing. And it's a tough task. Like McDaniel's running the best offense probably in the NFL from a schematic standpoint right now.
And they're also allocating so many players to playing too high.
Right.
So you're going to be more than likely one less in the box, depending on the personnel that they employ, whether it's 12, even if it's 11 condensed. It's a math issue. Exactly. The Giants already, even when the math is even, suck at defending outside runs. So the Giants were just sacrificing the run to stop the explosive passes. And that's why it's so frustrating when the Giants were like, all right, we're just going to do cover one on this third down. And they recognized it just like that, and they made them pay.
Immediately, right. Yeah, the Giants gave them one opportunity to hit that, and they hit that. Otherwise, the Giants did a pretty good job of limiting the downfield stuff, at least in the passing game. Run game was not good. I didn't think in this was the worst run defense of the year, I thought, for the Giants. If we had to grade it out 1 to 10, this would have been like a 0.3 for me. It's just, and it's a tough task. Like, I get it, but like the Dolphins were also smart with it. They weren't running at the interior of this defensive line. Like and by weren't, I mean, like some teams have done some of what the Dolphins did outside runs, but the Dolphins were just basically all outside runs in this game, with the exception of a few plays, one of which you brought up. So it just, it was a great game plan to attack what the Giants are bad at on the defense side of the ball.
So a couple players before we get out of here, Dan, that we thought played or like intrigued us, played well, and some that left some to be desired. Now, we brought up Bobby Okereke. We brought up Isaiah Simmons. We brought up Dexter Lawrence. I felt like Cordell Flott was a player that was relatively impressive. Actually had some physical plays. It was the second quarter, about 1:12 left, a 1st and 10. It was one of those quick screen plays that killed the Giants. But Flott came flying down, and he knocked back one of the wide receivers. And it wasn't Tyreek, and it wasn't Waddle. It was one of those other wide receivers that the Dolphins have. And this is the second time this year I was watching a tape where I was like, Flott has a little bit more physicality than we saw last year, which is excellent because we knew how he was a young player. 21 years old or whatever the hell he is. He might be 22 now, a very young player who's still growing into his body. He was severely underweight when the Giants took him in the 3rd round. And now they're starting to give him a little bit more. You don't see as much Darnay Holmes. And they use nickel personnel. Whenever the Dolphins went into 11, Flott was the defender that was on the football field. So maybe there's going to be a role that he's going to grow into. And hopefully the Giants will start to see the player that they hoped to get. Maybe he's one of those players from a Joe Shane draft class that is developing. That's my hope. I think it's a little optimistic, but at least he's popping on tape a little bit.
Yeah, I like that take. And that's not something that, everyone's focusing on right now. The focus is on the negatives, but we can still see some development within this. Evan Neal, last week, we talked about in the last episode, Cordell Flott's development. I think Bobby Okereke and Isaiah Simmons' development is also somewhat promising to an extent. Kayvon Thibodeaux looking better, I would say. Outside of those players, Banks, I thought, had a solid game for the most part until the injury. Dable says he's probably going to play this week. We'll see what happens there. I'm hoping that he got lucky and got out of that one. Negatives from he'll be a player for them. Like I don't know what the ceiling is quite yet. We'll still learn. We'll find that out as time goes by. But he's definitely someone who I don't think they're going to look back on as a bust by any means. Which
I agree, but he might just be Dory Jackson. I know it might be lazy, but that type of player. He wasn't a player in college, and we talked about this a lot. It's one of our biggest criticisms of him.
Ball skills.
He doesn't really come away with interceptions. Adoree Jackson really doesn't come away with interceptions either, but their natural athletic ability and their man coverage ability and what they do with their eyes when they are in zone, it's exceptional. And that's been Adoree Jackson through his career, at least as a New York Giant. And early, that's what Deontay Banks is as well. It sucks that Trey Hawkins, though. I know you were probably about to get into him. He the hype around him, it's a lot of cold water on it right now. But 6th-round rookie, got to put it in perspective.
Yeah, I think that maybe all of our expectations were a little bit too high for a 6th-round rookie based on what he did in training camp. Again, cannot make the end preseason, cannot make the jump. We can't keep falling for the trap of making the jump from training camp practices that don't really mean anything compared to the real game. I think we've seen it way too many times at this point. Even last season in the opposite direction, right? Giants offense couldn't move the ball in training camp last summer, and then they had a good season last year to an extent. Yeah, but that would be one. I mean, Leonard Williams is one that just keeps coming up for me, Nick. And I don't want to beat that horse, but it's just like if you're playing next to Dexter Lawrence right now, you're in one of the better situations in the NFL. Show us that, right? Like, give us an example of how good you have it. And we're not getting enough examples out of Leonard Williams.
You know what sucks too? It does seem like he's this close. A lot.
A lot. Yeah, a lot.
lot.
There were a couple pass rushes where he was close. Yeah.
Which was the narrative around Leonard Williams back in, 2019 when he was on
Right.
the Jets? He didn't have any sacks when the Giants traded for him. And it was always, oh, he's this close. He's kind of been that player for a while, unless he's about to get paid and then he really finishes. And I'm not implying, I'm just making a joke. One interesting thing that I just thought of. I think Jordan Riley dresses the next game.
Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah, they're going to have to get Jordan Riley some reps next game. And they haven't been like hesitant to play young players. Isaiah Simmons got a lot more snaps in this game. They've put Dane Belton in. They're not, I think it's game plan specific too, as far as who's playing personnel wise, but I would be intrigued to see him get some snaps for sure.
I think Ashawn might take a seat and we'll see Jordan Riley, and I would welcome that. And then I also wouldn't be shocked if Justin Pugh gets the call up. I think Justin Pugh will get the call
that
up
one
next
feels
week.
like a definite, even though they said they'd rather wait another week to get him really ready physically. We'll see if that plan remains the same now that they're as injured or more injured on the offensive line and just horrific play. I mean, they can't put the guys that they put out there this week, they cannot put back out there again.
Yeah, he might not play, but he'll be dressed. And if an injury happens, he'll be forced into it. It all depends on if JMS is back. There's still a lot of moving parts, and they might go with a Mark Lewinsky and a Ben Bredesen in that case. But I don't know if JMS is going to be back either. We'll have to wait and see. It's only Monday right now.
I didn't think Lewinsky looked that bad in this game, by the way.
Lewinsky would have been the unheralded player in this.
Yeah,
we should have said that last.
One of his better games, Lewinsky, as far as his Giants career goes. Not great, but better.
Couple blown twists.
Definitely a couple blown twists. That's going to happen with this Giants offensive line seemingly every game, apparently. God, man, it's just so sad that like some of the things that are plaguing this Giants team have plagued them for so long now, for decades. Not being able to pick up twists and stunts up front, just like that type of thing is just crazy to me. How many different players they've cycled in on the offensive line, different coaches they've cycled in and out, and yet the same issue remains. And it's not like this is an issue league wide for every single team. Some teams are obviously struggling with this, of course, like offensive line play is bad across the NFL, but to the extent of the Giants struggles, it just doesn't seem to be the case around the NFL for whatever reason.
And I also, just bringing this up, and now I know I'm jumping back to the offense. We talked a lot about those twists and how it was, the 4 technique or the 5 technique who goes up through the B gap and then the wide rusher. What did we talk about a lot last year? The Giants had a ton of success running through the B gap with Daniel Jones when the play broke down. Now you have a looping defender coming into that B gap.
Right.
What are we seeing Daniel Jones do? Run to the outside more. I think that's not a coincidence.
That's a great point. I like that point, but I didn't even think about that until now. If they're running those games where guys are looping into the inside, you can no longer escape in the B gap. And when you have to escape around the end, you're giving up a lot of the leg room that you had to gain yards because you're running laterally for 5, 6, 7 steps.
You're giving incredible athletes angles to cut you off.
Right.
That's why we see Daniel Jones getting hit along the sidelines a lot more than we did last year.
Right. Yeah. And that's a problem. That's a good adjustment by opposing defenses as well. Really, the thing they have to do more of, honestly, in my opinion, and it's much easier said than done, is but just like run like draw plays and those types of runs against these types of even on 3rd and longs, occasionally try to catch them off guard and run a play. Like find a way to make them pay for how aggressively they're using these opposing defensive linemen and how little respect they're paying for like some of these gaps. Like they're leaving gaps wide open with no regard.
I know, man. You speak of how the Giants have been plagued by the same issues year in and year out. Well, one of those issues, Dan, is the fact that they can't run screens out of
right. If they could run screen, like they could kill this type of stuff too. Like, but they have to at least try it. Like at this point, they have to. And they ran something to Waller this game, like a chip and release sort of semi-screen type of play that I thought was decent and interesting. But just something to slow down these pass rushers and make them at least second guess what they're doing.
I'm right there with you, man, and I'm hoping for better days. I don't think it's going to come against the Buffalo Bills. We'll have somebody on the podcast. I'm excited about this one. Another X's and O's guy like Matty Brown when we went through the Seahawks tape. So I'm excited for that interview, and we'll be breaking down everything moving forward with Week 6. But I can't believe we're heading into Week 6 and the Giants only have one win that they barely got.
Yeah, it sucks that we're staring down the barrel of probably another lost season for the Giants with a look ahead toward the future again. Instead of competing for the playoffs. We'll see, though. They're only 1-4. They're not mathematically eliminated out of anything. They just need to, like, if they could find a way to play good football, they could win games again. It's just like they have to find a way to play good football consistently again. And that's becoming the harder how to figure out thing.
crazy thing though, dude, is just if the Giants were to pull off the upset against the Buffalo Bills, say Brian Dable reaches into his bag of magic and says, I know how to defeat Josh Allen somehow, or whatever. They end up pulling it off. Everybody's buying back in. It's like, oh my God, now we got the Washington Commanders. We could be the Commanders. We could be 3-4. And maybe rightfully so. But the team has to look better. It can't just be a fluky win. You know, if it's one of those fluky wins where it's like, oh, Josh Allen had butterfingers and dropped the ball and the defense ran it.
Like, that's also the thing, Nick. It's like this could have been the fluky win. The Giants won the turnover battle 3-0 against the Dolphins, and they had a pick six of 142 yards, which is a 14-point swing. Like, this was set up to be the fluky win for the Giants. And despite all those fluky things happening, they weren't able to win this game. So I don't even know if fluky win is on the dartboard, on the bingo card of what can happen. I think the only thing that can happen to turn the season around is the Giants play better across the board in every possible way from an execution 100%. Standpoint and on a consistent basis.
I'm wondering how much Andrew, and again, they got beat 40-0 with these players, how much Andrew Thomas and Saquon Barkley will make a difference on offense, because the offensive product, the Patriots are the only team in the league with a worse offense than the Giants. And you have teams being led by Josh Dobbs and Bryce Young. Like the Carolina
doing
Panthers
better offensively, right?
Exactly, man.
They're at least finding ways to move the ball. Like, it's crazy, man. But we'll see what happens. Obviously, moving forward, we're going to have to get healthy. That's first and foremost. Thomas, Barkley, they need to be back on the field. But keep it locked and loaded here. Like Nick said, we're going to have a breakdown with a cover one guy who knows X's and O's and tape to preview the Bills game. And we'll probably try to talk to you guys this week about what you might want to hear. Maybe we'll do some looking forward questions or just get his thoughts on Dable and things like that, like how things that could impact the Giants' future. But we're also going to obviously preview the game and try to figure out what the Giants can do to be competitive in that game and surprise people. But thank you again for tuning into a season like this. This is tough. Obviously for you, it's tough for us. No one wants to be here. No one wants to be breaking down tape like this. Nick and I would rather be breaking down good tape every time. And I know some people at times have been like, oh, these guys are Daniel Jones haters. Like, you have to understand something. Like, things are much better last year when we were able to talk positively and break down all the good stuff Daniel Jones was doing from every aspect, from the enjoyment aspect of doing this and from the numbers game of how many people are actually paying attention to this stuff. So thank you to those who are staying with us through the hard times. We appreciate that. If I love something the way you guys have shown your love toward this podcast, and there are other things that I do enjoy, I try my best to continue to stay up with those as well, even when the times are bad, like now, and the times are bad for the Giants and for, quite frankly, like anyone who's doing content on the Giants, including us, because this is crazy. Like, they've fallen to being the most uncompetitive team in the NFL after a playoff win last year. It sucks, but hopefully there are better times ahead is all I can give you right now. And just know that throughout this, we're going to stay just as committed. And if the time comes where we need to turn toward the future, we're going to give you the best kind of future looking forward podcast that you can get as far as draft content, free agency content, and trade content goes with the Giants football team. So thanks again. We appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.